Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, it is 7:07 a.m. on this fine Labor Day morning. We are News Talk 105.9 WMAL, and we are making sense of the news. Happy Labor Day, everybody. Yes, I hope you're enjoying this day. I hope you got the day off, and thank you so much for sharing your day with us. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor, sitting alongside Julie Gunlock. Hello, Julie.
Good morning.
So we've got a jam-packed show. We got Noah Montgomery joining us later on in this hour. He's running for the D.C. City Council in Ward 7. Next hour, we got Mark Mix from the National Right to Work Committee and the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation, because, of course, it's Labor Day. We're going to talk to him about all things that are going on with labor and what the Harris Waltz ticket wants to do with all of this. Joining us right now, as he does every Monday morning, is Joe diGenova. He is a legal analyst. He's the former U.S. Attorney to the District of Columbia. And, Joe, I will tell you, I had listen, we all now know that Maryland is the number one cursing state in the country, followed by Virginia closely at fourth. I had a holy S moment last Tuesday as I'm driving in my car on my way home as we learn about the superseding indictment filed by Jack Smith. This is just crazy. We hear about this issue of a 60-day informal guidance within the DOJ. You're not supposed to get involved in cases or do things in cases within 60 days of an election. All of that's thrown out the window. I mean, what do you make of Jack Smith's move last week, Joe?
Well, let's just remember, because it's easy to forget, so much is going on. Jack Smith and Merrick Garland and Joe Biden upended nearly 250 years of tradition by indicting a former president. This was a series of absurd acts done for the sole purpose of interfering in the 2024 election. There's no doubt about that. It's not even a discussable issue. Now, why did Jack Smith file a superseding indictment? Well, because he had to. After the Supreme Court ruling, everybody has to remember this as well. When the Supreme Court ruled that any president, not just Donald Trump, any president has absolute immunity for core executive functions and presumptive immunity from criminal prosecution for official acts within the perimeter of official duties. When they ruled that, they destroyed any possibility of a trial for Donald Trump in the federal cases before the election and also the state cases. Now, he did that because he had to. Now, what does he do in the indictment? He doesn't do enough. He clearly got the message from the United States Supreme Court, as did Judge Chutkan, as did the three judges on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals who wrote, Judge Chutkan and the D.C. Circuit wrote two of the most sophomoric legal opinions you will ever read by federal judges. The one by the D.C. Circuit, by the three judges, was so bad that the Supreme Court actually referred to it for its lack of specificity, its thoughtfulness, and its analysis. This is the major slapdown of any circuit court of appeals that I have ever seen from the Supreme Court. So when Jack Smith re-indicted, you would have thought he would have been a little more careful. No, all he did was eliminate the acts of the communication between President Trump and Jeffrey Clark, the then acting attorney general, and the rest of the Justice Department. He did not exclude President Trump's communication with Vice President Pence. That dooms this new indictment to another dismissal and another series of appeals all the way up to the Supreme Court. I think the reason Jack Smith wrote that smarmy motion where he left the decision about when to set the trial date to Judge Chutkan was because he realized that the United States Supreme Court is gunning for him. They are waiting for the moment when they can say what they really want to say about him, although they left most of their nasty language for the four judges in the D.C. Circuit, 3 in the Circuit Court and 1 in the trial court, Chutkan, for their juvenile decisions. And by the way, I have reread the D.C. Circuit case again and again to try and figure out how 3 federal judges could have written such a poor decision on a matter of such importance, constitutional importance. And the answer is they just wanted to get Trump. Yep. It's real simple. And they thought the Supreme Court was going to go along with him. And boy, did they get a big smackdown.
Joe, for the sake of, so folks understand that there is history here, this is not Jack Smith's first time tangling with the Supreme Court and getting smacked at. Remind everybody about what happened in the last time, Jack Smith had to deal with a major political figure in a politically motivated prosecution, and what happened there.
Well, he had to do with the Bob McConnell case.
Yes.
And
go ahead.
The Supreme Court threw it out unanimously.
And that's the thing. Right. It was unanimous. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt, Joe.
No, that's okay. Listen, you're entitled to be flabbergasted by the fact that the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 that Jack Smith, in the case against Bob McDonnell, again misinterpreted federal bribery law and got a major smackdown. The reason for that is Jack Smith is very much like Andrew Weissman, the famed unprofessional, unethical senior Justice Department official who went after various former Democratic senators and lost in court over his interpretation of federal bribery laws. The one thing you can't ever forget is that when prosecutors become rogue and they are blessed by the Justice Department, which never wants to punish anybody who works for them, you get a series of prosecutions over a number of years which change the law. The Supreme Court has wised up to how bad the Justice Department has become. And what they're doing is they're doing what a series of attorneys general have never done, and that's right the ship at the Department of Justice. And the Supreme Court has very little leverage over the department except to smack it down when it makes bad decisions. And that's what they've done now. They've told the Justice Department, you have some bad people running parts of your department. Jack Smith is one of them.
Joe, we have a couple questions about Judge Marchand and his daughter, and we'll get to that. But Judge Marchand said he would issue a ruling on September 16th. What do you anticipate will happen?
Well, before the Supreme Court's decision in the Trump immunity case, I assumed that Judge Marchand was going to give the President Trump home confinement or some ridiculous travel limiting restriction so he could not campaign. Now I'm not so sure. And the reason is the three Supreme Court justices during the Trump presidential immunity argument in the Supreme Court alluded to the New York case. They didn't do so directly, but they did talk about state prosecutions of former presidents and how they can be used to politicize the criminal justice system. The opinion in the Trump case was just as much aimed at Judge Marchand as it was at the 4 judges in the D.C. Circuit and Judge Chutkan. The bottom line is Judge Marchand has to be very careful, and all the judges in New York have figured this out, that the Supreme Court has got them in their sights. Now they're looking over their shoulder. Yeah. You'll notice that Alvin Bragg did not disagree with the delay to determine when the trial should be held or this or that or the sentencing. He didn't agree to continuances for analysis because they know that the Supreme Court has the New York District Attorney's Office and Judge Marchand in its sights. That's why he's taking his time. Yeah. I actually still think that Judge Marchand is going to do something grotesque involving Donald Trump. If he does that, it guarantees that there will be an almost immediate appeal to the United States Supreme Court, and Judge Marchand will be struck down. But he's enough of an apparatchik judge that he's probably going to say he was going to give him home confinement, but he's going to give him supervised probation for 5 years. That's what he's going to do.
So we're gonna continue to talk about this with Joe. I'm glad you're sticking around, but first it's 7:50.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live.
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So we're continuing our conversation with Joe diGenova, legal analyst, former U.S. attorney here, and so so now the House is taking an interest in the judge's daughter and sort of her business connections and relationships here. Joe, what's going on there?
Well, the House Judiciary Committee, chaired by Jim Jordan, has subpoenaed the company led by the daughter of Judge Merchan. It was inevitable that they would get to this point. Jim Jordan sent a letter to Michael Nellis, who is the founder and CEO of something called Authentic Campaigns. That's a company that does major political work for the Democratic Party and Biden and Kamala Harris. They have accused this gentleman, Mr. Nellis, of failing to comply with the House investigation demands for any and all documents related to the prosecution of former President Trump. So the bottom line is they want documents so they can start looking into the conflict of interest that Merchan has in this case because of his daughter's work. So that's where we are. We're back at square one. Merchan should have recused himself in this case from the very beginning. But like most judges in New York, he has lost all sense of propriety, dignity, professionalism, and ethics. This is a pretty bad bunch in New York State. And as I advise people, get out of New York. Don't go to New York. Don't do business there. If you're a conservative or Republican, you're going to get screwed in New York courts.
Joe, and we totally glossed over the fact, so it's Labor Day weekend. It's the end of the summer, right? People are going away. There was a motion filed on Friday, late on Friday, that, about the by Jack Smith's team. What's going on there?
Well, the Smith team basically wants to tell the court, we do not want you deciding this issue quickly. We're going to leave this up to you. They filed what is called a scheduling motion, where the judge had asked them all to file proposals for when a trial should be held. And in a very, very late night filing, the prosecution did not ask for a trial date, and Donald Trump most especially did not ask for a trial date. Jack Smith said that what he wants to do is it's entirely up to Judge Chutkan when the trial date is set. And what he has done by doing that is Jack Smith has waved a surrender flag to the Supreme Court. He's trying to pretend that he's being reasonable after having been a vicious, unprofessional, unethical prosecutor for several years. He's now trying to look smart to the Supreme Court. In fact, he's a coward, because that's what all bullies are. They're cowards. And what he's done is, after this major smackdown by the Supreme Court of him and Judge Chutkan and the D.C. Circuit, he has said, hey, pal, to Judge Chutkan, I'm out of this. This is up to you. We're ready to go, but we know you have a lot of work to do because you have to hold basically a mini trial to determine which parts of the indictment survive. I just filed a new indictment for you to analyze. That's going to take time. This was a coward's way out. He realizes that he's just a step away from the most unprecedented step the Supreme Court could take, which is removing him from the case, even without deciding whether or not he was constitutionally and legally appointed. He has now besmirched himself, along with Judge Chutkan, so badly that there are probably members of the court who would like to remove both him and Judge Chutkan from the case.
Listen, Joe, we would be remiss if we didn't ask you for the latest in what's going on in Georgia, right? Because as we got New York and as we got the documents cases, we got all this stuff. We can't forget that there's all kinds of chicanery happening down in Georgia as well. What's going on down there?
Well, Georgia remains the ugliest of ducklings. First of all, the Court of Appeals is hearing arguments in the case where Fani Willis has tried to stay in the case. There's no way that case is ever going to go to trial before the election. The case may never go forward. the relationship between Fani Willis and her special prosecutor that she brought in doomed that case from the beginning. Her lack of professionalism and her unethical behavior has basically doomed the case to failure. I don't see that case ever going to trial. It's impossible. I can't imagine that the Georgia Supreme Court is not going to intervene and order that she be removed and the case be sent somewhere else for analysis by a new and independent prosecutor. I just don't see that case ever going anywhere. And I remember I got a call from their investigators in that case several years ago wanting to interview me.
Yeah.
And when I asked them about what, they couldn't explain, and they never got back to me.
Joe,
I never got a subpoena from them.
Will Fani Willis ever face any kind of punishment for her actions?
Hard to tell because, Georgia, so far the Georgia system has worked. The courts of appeals have heard the appeals from various people. Their system seems to be at the upper levels fair. The trial judge, as you know, was, back and forth, this and that. He found that all of them lied, but one of them could stay. I'll never forget that ruling.
Well, he was running for re-election.
Lied, but one of them has to go. I don't understand. If they both lied, they both should go.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is, I think that probably the case will never come to trial. It's never going to be prosecuted by anybody. And although I think Fani Willis should be disbarred, that would be the perfect, not a suspension. She should be disbarred. I don't think the Georgia Supreme Court has it in its will to do that. I think what's going to happen is she's going to be suspended for a year or more, but I don't think she's going to be disbarred.
Well, Joe, listen, all I can think about are the supposedly talented former lawyers who had took pleas in order to turn state's evidence in that case, who did it all for nothing. Joe, listen, we're going to let you go there. Thank you so very much. You have a good Labor Day, my friend.
Happy Labor Day to you and all of our great WMAL listeners.
Yeah, we've got more coming up right now at 7:25 here on WMAL.
9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Well, good morning, everybody. I am Andrew Langer in for Larry O'Connor. It is 7:37 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL. We are making sense of the news. Happy Labor Day to everybody. I'm sitting alongside Julie Gunlock. Nobody I would rather spend my Labor Day morning with than Julie Gunlock. How are you doing, Julie?
I'm doing great. Great to be with you, Andrew.
This is good stuff. We're having fun here. We hope you're going to be having fun on your Labor Day Monday. Going to be joined in the next hour by Mark Mix. Because it is, I'm going to say it again, I get a nickel every time I say Labor Day, Julie. Because it is Labor Day, we're going to be joined by Mark Mix from the National Right to Work Committee, the National Right to Work Legal Defense Foundation. But joining us right now, we are both intrigued by his candidacy. We're so glad he's thrown his hat into the ring. His name is Noah Montgomery. He's running for the D.C. City Council in Ward 7. This is an open seat now. Vincent Gray not running for re-election. Noah, how's it going on the campaign trail? What's going on? What made you decide to run?
Yes, first off, thank you, Andrew and Julie, for having me. It's exciting to be on the show today.
Oh, good, good.
To tell the story very quickly, me and my wife went to vote in the beginning of June in the Republican primary and saw that there wasn't anybody even running on the ballot. And as someone who that just kind of struck me is there needs to be some kind of representative that we need to be involved. And it doesn't matter what the numbers look like. We have a message worth taking forward, and the receptivity so far has been great.
Well, that's good. So you got Wendell Felder. He's the Democratic nominee. Not that we need to talk much about him, but it seems like it's more of the same career bureaucracy, sort of living inside the system. You're someone who's not inside the system. You're bringing some new ideas. How are those ideas? What are some of them, and how are they resonating with the voters in Ward 7?
Yeah, absolutely. My understanding of Wendell Felder is he essentially has the favor of the city, taking the continual policies of the mayor, which have not been working forward, and open common sense for Washington.
No, you're breaking up just a little bit. If you can, maybe if you stay in one spot, I don't know if you're walking around, but you're breaking up a little bit for our listeners, and we definitely want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, is that any better?
That's a little bit better.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
All right, sounds good.
Well,
the core components of the campaign are family, safety, and prosperity, really taking hope and common sense values to the district. Stuff such as expanding the Opportunity Scholarship Program, even safety, and that's the most common thing I've heard from voters. Was able to go on a police ride-along a little bit less than 2 weeks ago and really hear from some of the police officers what's going on, what's needed, the support that they haven't been getting from the city. So it's things like that we're taking forward.
It's really interesting, your emphasis on family, which I think is the most important and will lead to better results. If there's a strong family unit, you'll have better results in education. You will have a better civil society. You will have more safety and more prosperity. One interesting thing that I saw on your website, you put the pro-life issue front and center. You said all life begins in the womb. Life is worth preserving. How have people responded to your very vocal support of the pro-life movement?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm definitely not afraid to talk about these issues. On the front end, we talk about family safety and prosperity, and as it comes up, the life issue, as there are questions, we're definitely honest about that. So honestly, up to this point, it hasn't come up a whole lot. But we've even taken one time per month going in front of the abortion clinic and praying and trying to talk to people who are coming in. Because ultimately, if we're trying to run away from the issues that are needed, how are we going to get any further in the city? So I think people are looking for leadership, and if we're just compromising our values and what we should be doing, I don't think that's something that people are going to want to follow.
Noah, you mentioned that you did a ride along with the police, and you are very supportive of more funding for police. We know that there is a problem with recruitment and morale among the DC police. What did you hear from the police officers? I know you probably witnessed, and have seen the crime in DC, obviously. But what did you hear from the actual police officers? Has that improved? Has their morale improved? How are they feeling this election season?
Yeah, absolutely. During the police ride-along, the two main incidents that took place that I saw personally was a domestic dispute, and then we went to the hospital. There was recently some people who showed up with a gunshot wound. So the biggest call that they told me which emphasizes the family, and hearing from the officer himself, he was talking about how really morale is low in the department. A lot of people are leaving. They're looking for more people to join, but even the people who join aren't sticking around for a whole long. That unfortunately morale is low in the department, and they aren't getting the support that they need.
Yeah, so listen, Noah, and we're talking with Noah Montgomery. He's running for D.C. City Council in Ward 7. There really seems to be a real resurgence of folks who are either truly conservative, as you are, and that's a good thing. Folks who are libertarian. I'm thinking about Billy Easley, who is he is in an ANC rep in 1A10. There are others like you. I mean, are you talking to other folks? Is there a network that's growing of folks who are sort of challenging the status quo in D.C.?
Yeah, thankfully I've been working with some of the other Republican groups in the city, conservative groups in the city, and have been very encouraged by the kind of universal support of this campaign, that we need common sense, we need these things to be taken forward. Talking to people, there's this sense of really there's no need for division when you're talking about taking kind of values forward.
No, there we go. Well, listen, Noah, how do folks find out more about the good work you're doing in this race?
Absolutely. You can go to our website at noahmontgomery.vote. Appreciate the support, and feel free to reach out and contact us there.
Go and check him out there. Listen, this is good stuff. We need folks who can have the courage to take a stand and run on these issues. Best of luck to you, Noah Montgomery. We've got more coming up. It's 7:43 here on WMAL.
So much truth, you'll hope for traffic so you can hear it all on the Vince Colonnese Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
So, Julie Gunlock, I know you were as shocked as I was to learn that a socialist nation was looking to ban a platform where free speech was. Because for me, I've always thought of, socialism and free speech. They go together like chocolate and peanut butter, don't they?
They do. They do.
Or maybe they don't. Maybe it's really like I don't know. I could use another. Anyway, no, they don't go together. I was, of course, I'm being very, very facetious. Not shocked that Brazil was making moves over the weekend to ban X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, because this is what authoritarian governments do, don't they?
Yeah, the president of Brazil ordered a full and immediate suspension of X in the country, and was going to fine people a significant amount, thousands of dollars, if they were found to be using X and posting on X. And what was so depressing, actually, was to watch people on X in other countries, in America, for instance, ratting out those who were still using the platform. So sort of posting their names of people that were still using it. So it was, they could face a $9,000 fine per day if they use the platform.
And it is, listen, it's a situation. Elon Musk sort of pushed back and is pushing back, thankfully, on this, as he's going to do. This move is the latest chapter in an ongoing feud between a Brazilian Supreme Court justice and Elon Musk, which also included the freezing of the satellite internet provider's Starlink financial accounts in Brazil, which is 40% owned by Musk. Musk wrote, "The current Brazilian administration likes to wear the cloak of a free democracy while crushing the people under its boot." And that's exactly it. I mean, this is what happens in systems that are sort of leaning towards this authoritarianism. Now, listen, we've seen this before, right? These systems that couch themselves in the concept of being free and democratic societies when they are anything but. And of course they're going to go after platforms like Musk's, which are free to go after and criticize.
Yeah. Now, Andrew, I had heard that the NFL, I don't know if this game has happened already, but the NFL was going to host a game. So first of all, why? Oh, it's on Friday.
Coming up. It hasn't happened
Friday.
yet. Yeah, no, it's coming up the end of the week. Yeah,
the NFL did not pull out of that game.
No.
Typical.
No, this is, listen, but again, right? Well, typical to an extent, right? Let's assume for a moment that this had been, that this was California, or I'm sorry, let's pick a red state here. Let's assume for a moment that this was Oklahoma. And the Oklahoma governor had suspended X. Not that the governor of Oklahoma would do that. Not that any Republican red state governor would do that. But the NFL would immediately turn around and say, no, we're not going to play a game in Oklahoma or wherever. But this is exactly what happened.
I think
in
they'd
Georgia.
probably be fine with us suspending X. I think it's if they asked IDs before voting, where they would probably pull out.
Well, right. Well, that's exactly it. I mean, it's a situation in which we've seen this play before, and of course it's nonsensical. Of course it is stilted. Of course it is political. That's where we're going. That's where we're going. Now, the real question is, right, we've seen the attacks on Elon Musk here in this country, right? This is the amazing thing to me. And, Musk has said, hinting at this, he hinted at this type of censorship if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were elected. The reality is, of course, right, that because Musk, bought Twitter, he's allowing for free speech on Twitter, or X. I know we're supposed to call it X. I can't wrap my head around it. Because he let Trump back on it, we've seen the Biden administration turn its attention. Sorry, brain freeze there. Turn its attention to Elon Musk, right? Instead of going and using Elon Musk's Starlink service to try to provide internet in rural areas, we know that the Biden administration's FCC turned around and we're going with a less effective, less useful satellite internet provider at like something on the order of multiple times the cost. I mean, we're talking, I think it was like 4 times the cost, because this administration doesn't like Elon Musk. That's what they do.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some sort of moves like this if Kamala and Walz are elected, because the X is their worst nightmare. It is.
Right.
And you've got a media that would be happy to see X disappear, be limited in some way. You're right that they want to hurt Elon Musk. And this outlet, Twitter, X, is the only reason we know some of the things that we know today. All of this would have been suppressed. Obviously, the reporting of Matt Taibbi and many other outlets, Free Beacon, and all the others, exposing what the Democrats have done in this country. But without X, and the reporting is great, but the spreading it on X and notifying people through X is what's so important. So that's another thing. You care about free speech, you better be worried about a Harris-Walz administration.
Especially if you look at, we tie it back together with what Mark Zuckerberg finally sort of admitted to last week, and the sort of the issue of this. Here's what I know. And this is part of the reason why I fear a Harris-Walz administration, right? We know that they're going to continue with the policies, but in the same way that the Biden-Harris administration was a refinement of the anti-liberty, pro-statist, anti-individual rights approaches of the Obama administration, we know that a Harris-Walz administration would double down on these socialist and authoritarian principles. And they would use somebody like Alina Khan over at the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, to go after somebody like an Elon Musk. And so we have to be guarded against these things. This is, authoritarianism is authoritarianism is authoritarianism. But when you give these authoritarians an inch, they're going to take a mile down the road. So we have to be guarded against this in the coming years, don't we, Julie Gunlock?
We do, absolutely.
Yes. Well, listen, we've got so much more to get to. It is 7:54 here on WMAL.